Coogs house. Okay, so how is the school known for having like cool, crazy uniforms going to lose the uniform competition and the basketball game at home while yelling, "I just want to go home" over and over and over and
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to talk all things Cougs each and every day. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater can stop by, please be sure to hit subscribe down below and download the podcast each day. Plays on the Cougs all year long. If you're subscribed, our podcast should pop up in your feed each day, so be sure to make Locked On Cougs your first lesson of the day. And welcome back to the YouTube channel. Yes, they let us back for another week of YouTube. It's good to get to see you guys again. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. Remember, when we get to 250 subscribers, we're going to be giving away some form of a Marcus Sasser t-shirt from a guy on Instagram that we're going to talk to perhaps later this week. This is what one of them looks like. There's some really cool designs he's got going on. So we're going to talk to him later and see what all he's got going. But in the meantime, when we get to 250 subscribers, we're going to give away one of those shirts. To get entered to win one of those shirts, you just have to leave comments on the video. If you don't know what to say, tell us if you think a muffin is a cupcake. So today we're going to be talking all about Houston beating Oregon at their place in basketball. That's this whole full-length episode. If you want to recap the football game, honestly, it was kind of a dominant performance. It got bumped to the bonus slot. So go check out the bonus episode that came out today on Monday as well, as soon as we're done with the episode here. But yes, the Houston Cougars beat the Oregon Ducks 66-56 in Eugene, Oregon. It's their first real road game of the season. And frankly, Oregon sounded kind of raucous at times when it got cut to 6 in the second half. Late night game if your body had not adjusted like myself. And so we're going to talk a little bit about how that game went. We got 3 different segments here to talk about. And the first one, we're going to look at a breakout moment for freshman Terrance Arceneaux. Feels like a local kid in a lot of ways. We're going to give him a full segment just to break down how great a game he just had. We're also in the second segment to kind of look at some of the foul trouble that led to Terrance Arceneaux getting in the game like that from a couple different Cougs. And so we'll talk about like how that impacted the game and how the players reacted to their foul trouble in the second segment. And then the third segment, I'm going to look at kind of if Oregon, obviously Houston won, but did Oregon lay out a blueprint or an outline of how to beat the Cougs down the stretch? But here in the first segment, we got to take some moment to love on one of our own here in Houston. So we know no one loves Houston like Houston, and Terrance Arceneaux being from Beaumont is as local feeling as just about as it, right? I guess you could be like from Lamar, right? That's about the only thing you could be more local than that. And I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I want to open this segment by talking about last week when Andy Patton had me on Locked On College Basketball, like the more national college basketball podcast. We talked about Jamal, we talked about Marcus Sasser, we talked about Jarace Walker. And Andy goes, "Hey, Parker, if one of the guys that is not in that big 3 is making plays in the Final Four to help, or on the way to the Final Four or whatever, to help Houston cut down the nets, who's it going to be?" And I was like, there's something magical in that kind of a run about local kid, Beaumont United, Terrance Arceneaux doing it. Now, Terrance Arceneaux is a winner. We knew that much coming in, right? He's a 2-time state champion from Beaumont United in the state's biggest division, right? He was most outstanding player of the tournament in both of those runs. He hit clutch 3-pointers along the way in both those title runs. I mean, he is that dude when it comes to all the things. He's built to be a pro. He's at 6'4", 6'5", 210, lanky, right? Like he's built to do all those things, right? He might be closer to 190 than 210, but it depends what team listed, right? But in Houston, we've got a bunch of veteran guards, and he's coming off the bench, right? Most guys like Terrance Arceneaux would be starting at their college programs, right? And in Houston, he's not. And frankly, he knew that when he signed up to come, right? And so he comes to Houston, and he gets to come off the bench and immediately hits a huge 3, gets a clutch steal, and he attacks the cup. He actually doesn't make the layup because it's contested, gets the rebound, gets fouled, starts over possession. He gets another 3 and then has a layup on a back cut. And like suddenly it's like, oh man, Terrance Arceneaux has 8 of 10 points for Houston in like roughly a minute of basketball, right? And that is such a tremendous like light switch moment to pull off of the bench from any age player, but to have it come from a freshman in November, again, we're not even to Thanksgiving yet, folks. That's so early in the basketball season for him to be meshing into that kind of a role in his first road game as a college basketball, first true road game. It's a college basketball player in a Power 5 environment. I mean, Eugene, Oregon, the whole scope of it all, it's just tremendous. And it wasn't just his scoring. Like he played very well. He finished with 15 points. He played some more in the second half as well. It wasn't just in the 12 minutes. He had 5 rebounds. He had 3 steals. He had his hand on a ball a bunch of different other times. And he really was a tremendously impactful player that I don't think Houston wins without. And again, this is the freshman not named Jarace Walker that we're talking about here, right? This is the other guy in that class. Really, there's 2 other guys. We'll talk about Emmanuel Sharp, I'm sure, over the course of the season a couple different times. But tonight, and looking at Terrance Arceneaux, like, man, like if that's the guy we're getting off the bench, this guard room is deep. Like, oh my God, right? And so I'd say like he had his threes were like catch and shoot threes. And so like if I look at his game from that kind of standpoint, I'm not sure like open, catch, shoot, ice in your veins, big. The steals I thought were impressive because he's actually rotating off the backside. So get a little X's nose nerdy for a second. Houston's doing a lot of doubling and a scramble look on the front side of the press, and then rotating backside. So like the steal he had right when he came in that like sparked the lead or sparked the like run or whatever. He's actually covering someone down at more like elbow extended, free throw extended, a 3-point line. But when Shead and Mark, I believe it was, were going to double, right? You then see him sprint to whichever one of theirs man was at midcourt, and he just like meets the ball there. It's great timing, impeccable, like and like the vision and all that. I wish he'd made the contested layup, but obviously like we'll take in the ball back. I think it led to a Jarace Walker finish after that. Tremendous vision from a freshman, right? And he's just kind of that guy. And I went back and forth to Draft Deeper a little bit. One of the No Ceilings NBA scout like service, like they do all their content as NBA draft content, and he was like, no, we're on him. And I was like, no, like here in Houston I think we're all on him. Like, sorry, Draft Deeper, is nothing too special, right? Like we all knew about this one, right? He's from here. We knew about this one. And it's probably safe to say that like he's a lottery pick. He might not be a lottery pick this year. He may be a lottery pick as a sophomore, or he might be like a lottery pick as a sophomore that has to leave college as a freshman anyway. We'll see where that all those chips land. But he's going to be an impactful player, and being able to have him to throw out there when Marcus Sasser's in foul trouble, when Jamal Shead's not making his jump shot, or when Tremont Mark is, also whatever, bust a shoelace, all of a sudden having him to throw out there is just this instant energy, right? He mentioned that he was in the post-game presser and post-game media, he's talking about like just wanted to come in and help change the game. It was a close game. It shouldn't have been a close game. He was coming to change the game. And he said that what his teammates and the coaching staff have been telling him is that just play hard and the talent takes over. Again, he's a 5-star kid. So the message is just play hard and the talent takes over. And I have to say, I buy it. That's exactly what it looked like happened on Sunday night. He played hard. The talent took over. Kid had 15 points. MVP of the game, right? And, we said he's a safety net. He's a safety net for the Cougs. And speaking of being safe, this episode is brought to you by Simply Safe. Did you know that over the holidays, property crimes like burglaries and package thefts and all those kinds of things spike nationally? Our friends at Simply Safe are offering 50% off their award-winning security system because of that, so that more families can feel safe and secure this holiday season. If you order your system for half off today, you can enjoy advanced security and greater peace of mind all season long. Now, I always, when we bring up Simply Safe, talk about how much I enjoy having it now, because if I'd had it once upon a time when my car got broken into outside my apartment, I might still have, I'm a big sneaker guy. See, sneakers. I might still have some more sneakers because I got a few stolen in the trunk of my car. The cops asked me all kinds of questions about videos and if I knew who and did all those kinds of things, and I didn't. But if I had Simply Safe, I would have, because Simply Safe is an emergency 24/7 monitoring agents that use fast protect technology exclusively from Simply Safe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real, so you can get a priority police response. That would help me out. Simply Safe is a whole home security with advanced sensors in every room, window, and door. It's got HD security cameras for inside and out, smarter ways to detect motion and alert you when a threat is real, and even hazard sensors that detect fires, floods, and other threats to your home. 24/7 monitoring service costs less than $1 a day, and that's less than half the price of ADT's traditionally professionally installed systems. With the top-rated Simply Safe app, you can stay completely in control of your system anytime, anywhere, disarm, unlock for guests, access your cameras, adjust systems, etc., or find out who's breaking into your car, stealing your sneakers out of your trunk right in front of your home. Don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system I'm going to recommend. Get 50% off of new Simply Safe system at simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege. That's their biggest discount of the year, so don't wait. That's simplysafe.com/lockedoncollege. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Now, the second thing, we do have to talk about some guys that got in foul trouble, because I think it's interesting to see how the foul trouble kind of struck them differently, right? So I'm going to get into Houston's foul trouble. I can't do that without mentioning that Oregon apparently went 19 minutes of the game without fouling. Right? Like at one point in the second half, the foul count was Houston 11, Oregon nothing, and that lasted for a long time. And I want to give credit to Sampson's squad, because, I think there'll be a lot of talk about this going right, that going wrong, but the number whatever team in the country should beat an unranked Oregon by a bajillion, But a hostile environment on the road across the country with a couple freshmen really kind of leading the way, frankly. And the foul count's that out of whack. I feel fairly confident that that's the thing that is a good thing, right? To be able to pull out that win is a good thing, because there's no way they went 19 minutes without fouling. They just went 19 minutes without getting called for a foul, and that could be infuriating for most teams. But the culture Houston's built has been bigger than that, right? So, for example, we talked about how great Terrance Arceneaux was in the opening segment. We didn't talk about the fact that he had to do that because Marcus Sasser got 2 early fouls, and it looked like, oh man, they might be without Sasser for a long time. I will say of those 2 fouls, the second one, there was a loose ball at midcourt. The ball went sky high, and he went in and tried to get the ball, and 2 guys just collided. And I'm like, I don't know that I want a guy like Sasser to go after that ball. I'm not going to tell him to not go get that ball. And so suddenly it's like, okay, that's his second foul, I guess, right? I think what's interesting about seeing Sasser get in foul trouble, we haven't seen it much this season, but we have guard depth, right? We brought in Terrance Arceneaux. We saw Ramon Walker. We could also see Emmanuel Sharp if we need to at some point. I think it feels safe to say that, while Sasser is player of the year candidate, All-American, etc., right? We do have guys that can at least tread water for some minutes without him in the game. And I think it's also interesting to see it in watching huddles or listening to post-game media or whatever. It was very clear that Marcus Sasser had impacts on winning even when he was not in the game, right? And timeouts and calling plays from the sideline, all those kinds of things. He's finding ways to impact the game even when he's on the floor. And I think that's the kind of thing you want from your, I guess, junior veteran leader, right? That's kind of what you're hoping to have out of. I say that because he missed so much last season, but anyway, it's interesting to see him lead from the sideline that way, because when he's out there, he's the focal point of whatever we're doing, right? Also, I think it's worth pointing out that he kept his cool, came back in the game, and then had I said on Twitter, the quietest 16 points I've ever seen him have, right? Couple threes, couple layups, 1 breakaway dunk, boom. That's it. That's all it took, right? And I just felt like I was, game ended. I'm like, oh, he probably had 8, 9. Look, he had 16 points, right? That's just tremendous. I think the biggest moment of his scoring, he had a steal that led to a dunk, and that was fun to watch him get all hyped and flex. But the truth is that the play that led to it felt like it was the dagger, I should say, is it was a 6-point lead. It might have been an 8-point lead. And he just gets a kick out to an open three at the corner. And I was like, they left Sasser open. And it was like this moment where everyone was like, oh, crap, they got Marcus Sasser. Right? There was just like moments like, oh, God, because he had been kind of quiet all game, didn't play a lot in the first half. And then he drills this like open corner three. And I was like, we did everything but stop Marcus Sasser. Like that was like the entire vibe of what was going on. And I thought that was a really like poignant dagger in a way to end the game, because they'd found a way to get the ball out of Arceneaux's hand. They'd find a way to make Jamal Shead shoot deep threes. They'd like gotten Jarace Walker in foul trouble, which we're about to talk about, and whatever. And I was like, boom. Oh, crap. We forgot about the best player in America, right? The other guy that was in foul trouble throughout the game, that was interesting to see it affect them, was Jarace Walker, because Jarace Walker is a freshman and he's a younger guy. But also, from a roster construction standpoint, Houston doesn't quite have the same backups and answers for when he's not in the game, right? So when we pull in Terrance Arceneaux for Marcus Sasser, we don't really have a guy with the positional flexibility to replace Jarace Walker, right? Like we could go two bigs with Reggie Chaney and J1 Roberts, right? And so then you have like two traditional bigs out there. We could go really small with like a Tremont Mark sitting there, like moving him from the 3 to the 4 or whatever. But we don't really have someone who can do both things in the way that Jarace Walker does. And that's because he's crazy unique, right? That's not like they don't just have guys like Jarace Walker just like growing somewhere like that. Like he's crazy unique. And so that's kind of why that is, right? However, it also kind of means we need him on the floor for a lot of what we're doing. Sorry, Jarace, like you can't get in foul trouble, because frankly, Houston had just kind of found a way right before he got that fourth foul in the second half to kind of combat this, like, newsflash. Oregon was huge, right? And Validante and the Biddle guy, like those, they're massive, massive basketball players. But Houston had just gone to this lineup where they had Chaney and Roberts both in at the two bigs, and slotted over Jarace Walker to the 3, and ran a really interesting, like, I call it the floppy set. I guess it's technically a little bit of a spin on it. But they went a post-to-post screen to shoot out. I believe it was Roberts. Then they had Chaney on the low block. And then actually in the screen, you had Jarace Walker pop up to the nail elbow area, and he had like room to operate and work. And it was like, oh man, we finally have a lineup in a way that like we kind of match them up in size, because the size we gave up with Chaney or Roberts on their 4 and 5 man, because our guys are 6'9" and theirs are 7 feet tall, we gained in a lot by having Walker on their 3 man, right? Like all of a sudden it felt like we're kind of even the playing field. And then he got his fourth foul. And then I was like, oh, that was short-lived, right? Now, obviously, in like a game plan situation, we'd gone to that earlier, in a must-win in March, we got probably. But we didn't get to see much of it because Walker got his fourth and had to come out for a while to make sure we got to preserve him for the end of the game. And I also feel like, there was a shot clock violation at one point where like he knew he was in foul trouble. He pump faked, and instead of just pump and driving, he didn't want to get a pump. He didn't want to get offensive foul call. He like pumped and waited, and then like had an indecision, and then passed it, and it was a shot clock violation. Like, again, if he didn't have foul trouble, he probably just goes to his floater game, right? Because he's got that in the bag. So I don't know. Just interesting to see how those kinds of moments change things for him, right? Speaking of moments, this week's thrilling college football moment is brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the brand new lineup of Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the driver themselves. When I think of unbelievable abilities on the field for this week's thrilling moment, it has to be, if I'm going to the football game, I'm going to say, I'm going to go to the deep post corner that Nathaniel Tank Dell ran. I guess it technically wasn't the touchdown, so it might not quite get the hoopla, but like great pass protection, back-breaking 3rd and long play. You got Tank Dell going a streak. He breaks in on the slant on the post, and the guy covering him thinks he's got it, tries to undercut the post, breaks behind it, under the safety for the corner, converts on 3rd and long. Big play out of Tank Dell that I think I got to give the credit to there, even if it wasn't a touchdown. I could frankly go back, though, to the Matthew Golden touchdown against Temple, because that still feels like a bigger moment for the season. But we'll get to that later. This segment is inspired by the brand new thrilling designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today. Available now at nissanusa.com. All right, in our third segment here, I'd like to look at what I don't know how to phrase this. What did Oregon do that another team could watch and be like, that's how you beat Houston. That right there, that's how you beat Houston. And like, I'm not saying there's many things you can do. There's some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about that I think only Oregon or teams built like Oregon can do. But I also think it's, when Houston's in this aura where they're a top team in the country, we'll see what the rankings come out like tomorrow. Suddenly, we've got to look at like, well, how are other teams approaching us? And I think we need to do that because I don't think Sampson does that. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean, I think Sampson focuses on his team and his guys. But as fans of the team, we need to know like what's coming, right? Because we don't have to have the same mentality as the coach. The coach is like, we're going to get better at what we do every day. You and I can be like, what are we getting ready for parts, right? So that's a little bit different. Now, N'Faly Dante was their big man, and he gave Houston a lot of trouble. He's listed at 6'11" and change, 250. I think the most like consistent thing I'd see online was that he has a 7.5 foot, about 7'5.5" foot wingspan. He had 16 points, 11 rebounds, and 5 stocks or steals plus blocks combined. And frankly, they did not surround him with particularly great 3-point shooting. Oregon's not a great 3-point shooting team, but they did have a particularly bad 3-point shooting day. So, considering this game was a 10-point game at their place, that was a 6-point game for stretches of the last part of the game. I feel like the thing we're seeing here is that having size in a zone defense is going to be problematic for Houston. Now, Houston still got a decent amount of offensive rebounds. I'm not saying they didn't, but I am saying that half-court zone severely limited what Houston wanted to do offensively, because you saw Houston shoot a lot of threes, right? I believe I have down that they shot 11 for 22 from the 3-point line, which is a lot of threes when you consider how many of their possessions were fast break layups off steals, right? Like, I don't have that exactly. I don't have how many possessions were fast break steals in front of me, but I do have that they forced, 16 turnovers. And so, got to figure it somewhere in there. Anyway, there's a lot of threes for like very, a lot less half-court possessions. Because we're not exactly the team shooting a 3 on the break like the Golden State Warriors. And so I think as I look at this, I'm like, having big man N'Faly Dante in the middle of that zone, plus the Biddle kid, right? Where their other big, who was not quite as impactful, but certainly long, right? Nate Biddle, 7-foot sophomore, not quite as long, but certainly much longer than anyone Houston's got, right? Anyway, having them in the back line of the zone really meant that Houston was kind of limited to like getting to the mid-range, right? And what that ended up doing was it meant that the bulk of our baskets really did come in transition or like secondary transition, not so much off of made baskets and not so much off of, more traditional means. And frankly, it also, for a team that preaches offensive rebounding, really hurt us in that we didn't get to our normal offensive rebound marks. Houston had just 10 offensive rebounds, and I say just 10. Like, a lot of schools, a lot of teams might be totally happy with that. That's kind of low for us, right? And not just because like we've seen Texas Southern and how we played against other schools where we've seen the Houston teams of the past play, like Kelvin Sampson's teams value offensive rebounding a lot, and having just 10 offensive rebounds is kind of low. We got out rebounded 37-28, and we won the game. We had 9 less rebounds than the other team and won the game by 10 points at their place. And so I think that the thing here is going to be, can you keep Houston off the offensive glass if you're the other team with size and length, and then compete with them in shooting on the other end? Because that's the thing that Oregon could not do. Oregon also shot 22 threes, only made 3 of them, right? So like, suddenly it's like, ooh, had those numbers been more even, this game might have been different, right? Had both teams shot 9 of 22, suddenly it's a much different game, right? And so I think that's the deal with, like, do you have the size like N'Faly Dante to back it up? Can you sit in a zone with that size and make Houston shoot outside and like make Houston shoot mid-range and so on? And then once you've done that, can you keep up on the offensive end in the same way? Because Oregon could not do that part, right? Oregon was not able to do that. And so I think that that's why this thing goes 10 points Houston's way. I can already tell you that there's also a part of me that understands that, like, had Houston had a more even whistle, right? Not an 11-0 whistle for most of the second half. Whistle being the foul calls. The foul calls are 11-0. Like, Houston had 11 foul calls on them for most of the second half, and Oregon had none for most of the second half. If that were the case, suddenly maybe those other things don't matter as much. But also the way Houston plays defense, we've heard Kelvin Sampson say before that, like, he'd rather just foul and make them call it and see if they're going to call it every single time or not, right? And so a little worried about those kinds of things. But this is also the first test we've had where I've been worried about any kinds of things, right? And so maybe that's just like, maybe we get to St. Mary's in a couple weeks and it doesn't matter, right? Like, we'll see. But you can follow me all along the way, and we'll talk about it all you want to between here and now. Kind of with you Cougs news all week long this week. Big break between games. The basketball team, we played on Sunday night, and we don't play again until Saturday afternoon. So make sure you check on Locked On Cougs for all the things going on throughout the week. More than just box scores here at Locked On Cougs. You can find me on Twitter at Painsworth512. That's PAINSWORTH512 on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find me on other social media platforms, whatever, but every day at Locked On Cougs. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, because when we get to 250 subscribers, we're going to give away a t-shirt or two, so make sure you hit that, please. Thank you so much for making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. If you're looking for a second listen, I'm going to recommend the bonus football episode first. If you're into more Cougs football. If that's not your jam, I'm going to recommend Locked On Rockets. Jackson's doing a great job talking about all things Houston Rockets. Kind of a gut-wrenching loss to the Golden State Warriors on Sunday night, but he's breaking it all down in a great way, so make sure you go check him out as well. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go Cougs.